Jason, I've been in the field of gifted education for at least 25 years, and I have been extremely passionate about how we can get access to gifted programs for students of color, especially black students. So I want to really know what you've been working on lately.
So we have a new study that's coming out in AERA Open, which is the new online open access journal that AERA has. The study's called Discretion and Disproportionality, explaining the underrepresentation of high-achieving students of color in gifted programs. And we titled the study that way because we wanted to hone in on these disproportionalities between students in gifted programs of different race and ethnicity groups, and try to identify some of the factors that are at play. And we think, you know, our major hypothesis going into this study is that teacher discretion of other school personnel was going to likely play a big role in those patterns that we observe.
Here's concerns I've had over the years, and I mean a long time. We can have like school district data and statewide data, but it doesn't increase the sense of urgency for people to actually do something about the lack of access for these, three populations. So I'm really pleased that there's a national study that is taking a look at these issues.
People will say, well, we know that kids on average achieve at different levels in elementary school for whatever reasons. You know, kids are entering kindergarten at different levels, and so, the gifted population is just reflecting achievement differences. But one of the things that we find is that that's not true. It's I think an important descriptive fact from our study is no, look at two kids who have the same reading and math scores, and just one is African American and one is white, and the probability that that white student is assigned to a gifted program, even with the same achievement levels, they're about twice as likely. We throw a lot of factors into the equation, consider a lot of different factors, and we're never quite able to fully explain that gap. It points towards an area that you've done a ton of work on. I mean, I think we have some good hypotheses about how we could change the system to increase representation of traditionally underrepresented groups. But it's not achievement differences, it's not aggregate achievement differences are not the explanation.
Well, that's one of the things I was really pleased to see in your report and in other work that you've done. I feel like you are taking the approach that we're going to stop the excuses and stop blaming students who have not had access to certain kinds of opportunities.
I think there's certainly evidence in our paper that's certainly a really strong candidate as an explanatory factor. I mean, that we have this really, I think, compelling finding in the paper that white students' probability of being assigned to gifted, conditional on all these other factors, it doesn't really matter the race or ethnicity of your teacher if you're a white student, a white elementary student. If you're an African American student, your probability of being assigned to gifted is much, much lower, actually, with a white teacher. Another just simple descriptive fact that we uncovered in looking at national data is, something like, I think it's 91% of white and Asian students in the sample attend a school that has a gifted program, but only about 80% of African American kids are attending a school that has a gifted program. And so there's just a structural difference. I mean, there's just a very clear access problem.
Well, your study reminded me of two things I always talk about, and it's also a national issue, and that is lack of diversity among teachers and then even those in higher education. So with about 85% of the teaching force being white, it's almost inevitable that students of color, all students, will not have a teacher who looks like them. And so the implications of your work about the importance of teacher diversity, which is a national issue, and I'm going to go ahead and say a national crisis, is so important, but it's not noted enough in gifted education.
I think it's really important to also keep in mind what having an African American teacher in that classroom means for how students respond to that teacher. The students' likelihood of being able to demonstrate giftedness is probably a function of that teacher's race and ethnicity. I think the parents' likelihood of going to a teacher potentially and advocating for going to my kid's teacher and saying, I really think my kid needs to be tested. I really think my kid might be gifted. That could also be a function of the teacher's race and ethnicity. I might feel more comfortable with a teacher that I share a common cultural background with, and we lose out on all of that when when we have a teaching workforce that's overwhelmingly white. That said, I think the referral issue is the one really to focus on. And like you said, the teaching workforce is not going to change overnight. And so you think about this, I think about this, like what are some short-term solutions? What are some short to medium-term things that systems can try to do to address this problem? And universal screening programs, I think, are a really good candidate.
In this study, you do offer solutions, and I think they reflect some of the most important, not just temporary or beginning solutions that need to be made. They're concrete, substantive, short-term, and long-range solutions. So what do you think are the maybe 2 or 3 most important things that need to happen to desegregate gifted programs now and include the subjectivity issues?
Right. Well, my mind really goes to 2. One of those is universal screening. I mean, I think we need to make some effort to take some of the discretion out of the process. We need to ensure that every kid has the opportunity to be evaluated. And so, if we just universally screened, I think we take a huge step towards closing the gaps by race and socioeconomic status, access to the opportunity. I mean, I think it's important to not think that just implementing a universal screening policy, while probably taking a big step forward, is probably not going to be enough in a lot of systems, given the kind of evaluation instruments that they're using.
So given universal screening, which I'm 100% an advocate of, and being mindful of making sure we choose tests with best test principles in mind, what do you think is really going to bring this together to make sure that all of this works out in terms of access?
You've got to have district and state policy folks, I think, that are really committed to being serious about this as an issue and really trying to think strategically and seriously about implementing solutions in their particular contexts. Well, I think we need to be serious about underrepresentation issues in gifted services for students of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. I think we're pointing towards some potential solutions. I think we have to get serious about those solutions from a policy perspective, also as a higher education and as a research community, to learn more about what the factors are that are driving these disparities. But we've got to get serious about addressing them.
I agree.